Okay, so welcome to Conversations with a Coach, moving from aha into action. I'm Randy Levin. I am a certified transitional life strategist. I'm an author, a speaker, and a reinvention expert. And so when we think about all these decisions that we make in our 20s, all these lifelong decisions that we want to stick, and then we think about what happens. We turn 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70, and we change, and we're supposed to change. And what happens is there's friction between all these decisions that we've made and all these things that we've become. And we have to think about what's next. So what's next right now is Michael. Michael O'Brien is joining me as co-host tonight. Michael and I are not only good friends, but we are alumni from IPEC Coaching together. Michael is a leadership business coach. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael to say a little bit more about himself before we get started tonight.
All right. Hey, everyone. Hey, Randy. So Lisa Christensen, I see you on the line. So I am married to a Christensen. But it's Tensen, not how you spell it, but it's all good. So very cool. So as Randy says, so Randy and I go back a few years. We met through coaching, our coach training. So she was my coach actually during coach training. So she's an awesome coach. So anyone thinking about using Randy as a coach, you should definitely talk to her about coaching because she definitely inspired me. She's the reason why I'm writing a book about my journey, my recovery, from my accident and lessons learned. So prior to being a coach, though, I was in corporate America. So I spent 22 years in corporate America in the pharmaceutical industry because if you're in New Jersey, you work in the pharmaceutical industry. So commercially, I did sales, marketing, and operations. And then I had a big life aha moment, July 11th, 2001. I consider that my last bad day ever. And that was the day I got hit head on by a Ford Explorer when riding my bike at a company meeting. He crossed the center line of the road. I was going about 22 miles an hour. He was going about 40. And then after that, it's a physics experiment in terms of kinetic and energy. And so, but I'm here today. I'm still riding. I'm still racing. And I think tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the accident, a little bit more, Randy, right? Lessons learned.
It's all about transformation. Yeah. And in order to have some sort of transformation, we have to get to a point in our life where something has to give. And for one reason or another. And sometimes it's something that comes internally and sometimes something that actually does happen in our lives, like in Michael's case, that alters everything, changes everything from what we know to something different. And it's our ability to be able to embrace that. So tonight, Michael and I are going to dive right into that concept of change. We'll be discussing tools you need to get out of your head and more into your heart. Michael and I, as we both said, both reinvented ourselves, and our lives both took us somehow to coaching. So here we are. We came here for different reasons, but we are doing similar work. And we know that reinvention is powerful. And we also know that it's not always an easy journey, to admit that you're at a point where you want to really have that change in your life. So clients often come to me and they'll say the following: I think I want a coach. I want a coach because I'm overwhelmed, or things are just not quite happening the way I need to, or I can't seem to manage my time. And the piece that I always want to make known to people is this, that Michael and I, and all coaches, we don't come with pixie dust. And people think we do. They think that we get hired. Oh, I hired a coach, so the work is done. But that's just it. It's all about that four-letter word. It's about work. And it takes work to make change and work to make transformation, and it's not a one and done. So Michael, it's Estee Lauder who says, I never dreamed about success, I worked for it. So what do you have to say about work?
Well, so hustle and grind is right now very popular, right, in social media, thanks to Gary Vee. So Gary Vee's out there. He's like, he's awesome. He's got his blogs and vlogs and tweets and everything else in between. So I think there's really something powerful to his message. Now, back for us folks maybe a little bit older than Gary, it was just sort of hard work, right? So I had my aha moment. And then, so you have a vision, right? So it's sort of telescope and microscope, right? So the telescope is around your vision for the future. Mm-hmm. My aha moment was like, okay, that was my telescope. And then I developed my mantra of working hard today to make tomorrow better. Right. And I waked up the next day and work hard today to make tomorrow better. And that sort of was my microscope. So Microscope is the daily things that you have to get done, your priorities, your essentialism, if you will, that will actually help you get to the telescope moment, like the vision that you want for your future. And that's sort of my 2 cents. So love Gary Vee, watch his stuff, but I sort of go old school and I just sort of call it hard work. So.
It's hard work, and it's also a process, and that's where people forget about that. And they look at it and they say, oh, I can't do that. That's this big, huge mountain that it's going to take for me to do something. And I'd rather say, hey, it's the hill, because it's all about the process. We need to have that goal, but we need to have that process that gets us there. The process is the journey, and that's where everything, all the transformation takes place. So we already know what we want to change sometimes, but sometimes we don't really know what's next or how to get there. And we're uncomfortable with that. So we tend to focus on what we have to give up, right? And we really need to focus more on what we will achieve and what we will accomplish, what we'll bring into our lives, rather than what we're excluding from our lives when we're changing. Let's discuss that a little bit, because I think that's a key point, and I think people kind of miss that a little bit.
Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge, so Ken's drinking rosé. I have a Pinot, Ken. So
I have a Pinot, but it's in a coffee mug.
Oh, you're hiding it. That's
yes,
that's not very,
keep calm and listen to the Coach mug.
I'm not sure how authentic that is as a coach. You're hiding the wine from everyone, but that's okay.
I used to have the wine in the wine glass, and somebody commented, and they said, oh, I don't know, maybe you should just be sipping tea or coffee.
I'm not.
What if I just put the wine in the coffee mug and then please everyone?
I'm just stating fact. I'm not judging. Just to let you know.
Of course not. Coaches don't judge.
So, but I do think, this also gets wrapped up in our story. So, we tell ourselves, and society tells stories to make sense of the world, right? So we want, we're hardwired for safety just as human beings. It's our neuroscience. So we tell stories to sort of keep us safe, right? We tell stories for a sense of community, right? Who's in your tribe, or in my case, who's in your peloton? Mm-hmm. And for belonging, right? Do I fit? Do I have sort of the jets for the job, if you will? And so when we tell ourselves some of these stories that don't necessarily serve us well, we actually have to give that up. And that can be really frightening, worrisome, anxiety-ridden for a lot of people, right? Because that story that we're telling ourselves keeps us safe, right? And we get to sort of play the victim to a degree. And when we play these roles in our stories, they all sort of serve a purpose, right? When we play the victim, we actually get some benefit from it. We get some sympathy. People pay attention to us, like, woe is me, and woe is you. And I had that certainly. So I had a moment when I got my last bad day, July 11, 2001. For the first few months, I was in a very dark spot. And I was waiting for the air ambulance, the helicopter, to take me to the hospital. I told myself, like, if I live, and there was a real question about that life would be different. When I got out of the ICU, life was different. It was just much darker. I was sort of going through the 5 stages of grief. And so life was different, but not in the way I imagined, until I realized I had that aha moment where I had to give up that part of the story, right? Because during that part of the story, I got a lot of attention. Oh, poor you. It's got to be tough to be you. And I sort of got to have my own pity party. And a lot of people were coming to the pity party. But I wasn't necessarily moving forward. I was left stuck. Things weren't changing. And I knew if I wanted to be the best husband, father, just best version of me that I wanted to be, I had to change my story. And that's really was my aha moment, that I had control and say in what the story was. And I was going to choose something different and let go of something that was somewhat subconsciously comforting in a lot of ways.
So, Michael, you had a choice, is what we're saying.
Totally. Right? Total choice. We all have choice.
We have choice.
Even in the darkest moments, we have choice.
We do. And just another little piece about storytelling, and we all do it at some point or another. We all do it, some of us more than others. But there's also another way that we tell stories. We very often think we know the ending to something. So in other words, we approach a situation, maybe it's a relationship situation, and a specific individual may act a certain way or always have acted a certain way. Let's say at Thanksgiving dinner, or in a specific situation at work, or what have you. And so we already tell ourselves when we enter in a similar situation, oh, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not even going to say that, or I'm not going to approach them because they're going to say this. And so we've already written the ending to something, but we've never lived the moment today to have it happen. And sometimes we really get into this situation where we're approaching, and I really think this has a lot to do with why relationships don't work, why there's so much divorce too, is we all change, right?
Yeah.
And so we approach people sometimes, our spouse even, let's say, and we're looking at them because we have this history, right? So we're looking at them and we have history of the way something may have been in a similar situation. And now we're already telling a story of how it will be. And so instead of hearing what they're really saying and what's really going on, we're reacting to what was or what we think may happen. So we're in the past, we're in the future, but we're not in today.
Yeah.
And so one of the cautions I always like to throw out there to people is that you've got to live in real time, because that's the only time we really have. And while we're busy telling all these stories and evaluating people and things for what we think they are, they may not in fact be that anymore, because just as we change, other people change, situations change. So we have to look at it for what it is today in the world that we're in this moment, and not what happened yesterday or what happened tomorrow.
Oh, no, absolutely spot on. So when you mentioned Thanksgiving, I thought you actually attended some of my family Thanksgiving.
with Michael, always
yeah.
with you.
but what you're speaking of is a sort of a classic assumption, right? Because something happened in the past, it's bound to happen again. You know, we do that at work, we do that in life, our relationships, and you know, our relationships really drive our success. It's what brings us together. It's our tribe, if you will.
Right.
And our conversations build our relationships. So when we're in this assumption mode and we think we already know the ending to the movie, we're not effectively listening, right? So we get into this mode of listening long enough for the other person to stop talking, because we have this brilliant idea that we must share so we can win the argument. We're not intuitively listening. We're somewhat subjectively listening. So we never necessarily connect, right?
Yeah.
So, and when we don't connect that way, we can't build trust.
Right.
And since we're hardwired for safety, friend, foe, fight, or flight, when we're not sure about the other person, that jacks up cortisol and adrenaline, and it downregulates dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin that actually brings us together. So that's the real danger. So being present, as you talked about, sort of trying to control our assumptions, allows us to connect with people and build those connections that actually build our tribe.
Exactly, because otherwise we're living something that isn't, and there's so much stress in that. You know, you're anticipating that someone's going to upset you, and they're not upsetting you, but you're responding to them as if they are, because they did once. So it's a little mixed up.
And it generates, it goes back to, I know you know this, and a lot of people on the phone know this too, is our thoughts drive our emotions and drive our behaviors, right? So, you just take the political season, regardless of who you want to vote for, Hillary or Donald or the other candidates.
Or someone else.
Or someone else, other, who knows. But a lot of the conversation, if you listen really closely, it's all playing on emotions, right? So trying to hit different emotions to generate different behavior. And most stories have an emotional component to it. Sometimes these emotions work really wonderfully for us. Some fear is good, it protects us, but too much fear for too long, or too much worry, anxiety for too long, chronically just makes us sick. And we don't necessarily make the best decisions. We react instead of respond. And we don't tap into this beauty, our prefrontal cortex, that allows us to be a little bit different than all the other animals are running the planet.
If anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to chat about also, please feel free to type that into the chat, and we can unmute mics as needed. And we'll move forward. So let's assume we know what we want to change. We know that we want to improve ourselves in some way. We want to step forward into X. And then we throw our bodies down because we're our own worst enemies sometimes. Big roadblock. Well, I can't because I don't have the time. Or my kids need me. Or I'm not sure I have the money for that. I would if I could, but I can't. So it's all these excuses. And some are really valid, but that's what they are. They get in our way, and they're excuses. So I like to look at the roadblocks kind of as practice. It's kind of like a beta test. So just like, I used to do this on Blab, and Blab was forever in a beta test mode. And I used to laugh because it was the best way to be imperfect, because something would inevitably go wrong.
Now we have Zoom, and Zoom
Now we have
allows us
Zoom,
to
and
be
something can inevitably go wrong.
Yeah.
But you have to look at it when we try different things, anything, like even my programming through this platform. Something may go wrong, right? We're testing it. We're always testing it. Even when we get it right, something else changes, or we want to add something, or we want to do it a different way than we've done it before. So what would happen if we look at change and we look at life sort of as a beta test? Because it's less intimidating. Because if we're testing, we're practicing, and we allow ourselves to have that balance in there a little bit differently. Anyone have anything to say about that? Anybody want to add anything to that besides Michael?
Yeah, I can definitely add to that, but I'd love to hear if anyone else does. I'll give people a few minutes.
Should I unmute? I'm going to unmute everybody.
A few seconds.
You all look like you want to say something, so everyone's unmuted. I don't know who those little phones belong to. There's all these phone numbers, so welcome whoever you are.
So one might be Donald Trump. Now he's probably
maybe. But he's got
or Hillary. I might be. Bill's going to look out.
Beta testing needs to go on there. So if we look at change as something that's in test mode for us, less intimidating?
I'm sorry?
Oh. What?
Anyway, anything?
Yeah. You want me to respond? So this is actually good practice, Randy. So this is, so, I'll relay an experience that just happened. Actually, I wrote, my latest blog was about this. So I went into a workshop. It was with a new client. I wanted to impress, right? I cared about the outcome. I was concerned about the outcome. I was all that. But I was run down. It was a busy month emotionally, for a variety of different reasons, mainly like caring for elderly parents, and I'm away, and my sister is right in the community, and there's a lot of burden on her and a lot of guilt on me, right? So I wasn't my best, and I was also delivering the presentation was content I knew like the back of my hand. It was stuff I talk about every day with my clients, but it wasn't a new format. I tried like a whole new way of doing it out, and it was a hot mess. I'll be perfectly honest, and I wrote about that in the blog. It was just an out of body hot mess, literally and figuratively. In fact, I actually asked for a break. I'm like, can I take a break? Because my train of thought was just off, So it gets to some of the 6 influencers that drive our performance, but it was a moment. So in the moment, it feels awkward. It feels very unpleasant. To be honest, it was mortifying. Like you're a bit embarrassed because you're a professional and you want to put out good work. We all do. But, the key is that those things are going to happen, right? You're going to have a Zoom failure or a Blab failure. The last time we tried to do this together was a Blab failure, right?
We had
we had a little moment, and then we repivoted, and now we're here.
I somehow blocked Michael, and there was no way to get him back.
Yeah. So and people are Facebooking me, like they're DMing me on Facebook, like we're on, and no one. And there was a little bit of panic, right? The heart rate was up, the blood pressure was up. And then it became a moment to take a pause and, reflect and drink the wine from the bottle, not from the mug. And we came back, at the end of the summer here. So, and the same thing happened with my workshop. I had my moment, went back to the car. I said a couple of choice words to myself. I beat myself up a little bit. And then I drove home and used it for reflection. So my PBR moment, not a Pabst Blue Ribbon moment, but a moment to pause, breathe and reflect. And from that, actually, I had a workshop 2 days later, and that workshop was a success. And so, and I don't think it would have been such a success without that moment a few days earlier. And that moment made me better because it forced me or gave me awareness to prep better, to show up in a different way, that I had choice in the matter. And
it's practice.
Today, I have gratitude for it. In the moment, not so much. I'm going to be honest. But, through practice, and this is key, I think, for all leaders, for all people, we're going to have moments. The key is how quickly you can respond and pivot out of it, right? And that's one of the things that my accident taught me, is that you can pivot out of these things much, much faster so you can get back into forward movement and not get stuck in the drama and the cesspool of your inner critic.
Exactly. So I want to take a moment because we talked about this, and we're just talking about figuring out kind of what's next for yourself, where you want to get those results. One of the things I like to talk about with my clients and with my community, the idea of legacy. We think about legacy as something that is there, obviously, when we're gone. That's the traditional definition of legacy. It's what we leave behind. But I kind of refute that. And I think legacy is something that we create and we carve out each and every day. And it starts today. I'm going to read an excerpt from my book.
Oh, cool. Your book. Awesome.
It's an anthology series.
It looks pretty. It's a hot looking book.
Yeah, well, I have a chapter in it. It's an anthology. There's 19 authors in it. And my chapter is called Signs from the Road of Life. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from it because it speaks to kind of the things that we're talking about right now. So here it goes. Want to get results? No problem. You're in the driver's seat. Your destination is yours to decide. So turn off that cruise control because being in the driver's seat takes work and commitment. Turn the key and program your personal GPS. GPS is an acronym that defines my signature coaching system that I use with my private clients. I love to travel and explore new places and believe it is the adventure that makes the trip worthwhile. It's okay to get lost. In fact, I recommend it. If we never get lost, we never do work to get back on course and to find our best route. This GPS system is your private toolkit to design and define your life on your terms. It turns your individual signs on the road of life into your successes. Begin. Start your engine. What does destiny mean to you? Write it down. Can you envision picking exactly the flower that you want from the field of life? Reinventing and refreshing your journey is introspective and emotional. And it is really emotional. It involves unpacking many of the things you carry around with you, letting them go daily for newer and lighter baggage. And here is how your personal GPS breaks down. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I am going to share the G with you because I think it's really important. G stands not for goals, surprise, surprise. It stands for growth. Personal growth should be measured and defined less by long-term goals we set and more by the successes encountered along the way. If we focus only on goals, we forget about the small successes and steps on the path to those goals. We become caught up in the end result rather than in the journey to get there. We focus on tomorrow and shortchange today. The ride itself is where growth breeds. It's where we do the work and experience the grit today to be successful. It's also the place where we find our courage. Having the guts to friend our fears by leaning into what scares us the most empowers us to alter those fears. There's no finish point when we focus on growth. Why? We're forever a work. It should always be a journey. We should never. So I just wanted to share that with you. Get results. It's 19 authors, all about how we've gotten results, all types of things from health and wellness to business to personal growth, available on Amazon.com and Kindle, and through my website, which I will discuss with you later.
Awesome.
Back to that whole idea of...
Do co-hosts get a free copy?
Sure.
For your guest?
You can come to my actual book signing.
Is that...
I have a virtual book signing.
You entice...
Signing.
Because rumor has it you enticed me to come onto the Zoom by giving me a free copy of the book.
I wouldn't do that.
This is being recorded, right? This is, yes. All right.
That's what it says.
Yes.
Funny.
All right.
So fears. So it brings me to fears. So friending our fears. We all have these fears. And that's why we don't just jump into change and don't just say, okay, well, I'm going to do this and get up tomorrow and do it, right? Because we're afraid that it won't be a success, or we're afraid that we'll somehow fail, or we're afraid that, it won't be perfect, or whatever that fear may be. Michael, talk to us about fear.
Oh, that's a good one. So I think, fear shows up in a lot of places. I think a lot of people don't want to call it fear because it seems a little too extreme. So we call it worry or anxiety. So, when I work with my clients, I don't really care what we call it. It's just whatever. It's a block, right? It's a block that sort of holds us back. Even Sheryl Sandberg, when she wrote Lean In, sort of talked about breaking past whatever emotional block it is, fear, worry, anxiety, and participate, take a shot, right? And the worst that could happen is that you learn something from it. So, and I had my moment. So when I was you know, I knew I was going to become a coach in the ICU. So I'll share a little bit of that story. So when I was in the ICU, I was drugged up. I don't remember any of these 5 days, but I kept on repeating this guy's name to my wife. I also told her to buy Amazon stock when it was $9 a share. We never bought the stock. That was mistake number one. Mistake number two is I interviewed her for a job, believe it or not, and I didn't offer it to her, but we're still married. And the third bit, which
Can we ask what job that was?
she just came in, and she came into the ICU one morning. I was like, hey, thanks for coming in. Thanks for expressing interest in coming to work here. I'm Michael O'Brien. I'm a hiring manager. Again, I don't remember any of this. I started asking her like interview questions. And
Wow.
at the end, I said, you know, listen, it may take me a couple weeks to get back to you. I don't know if you know this or if they told you, but I've been in a very bad accident. Right. And so she just like left the room bursting out laughing. And all the nurses were like, are you sure he didn't get any brain damage, any TBI? And they're like, no, certainly not. So, so that's a little funny aside. But the big thing is I kept on saying, hey, find David. David's our leader. He will show us the way. David actually happened to be the first coach I ever knew as a profession. So he was a coach that was working with my team and a team from Pfizer, and he was making such a profound impact in my life. I kept on repeating his name in the ICU. In that moment, when I came out of the ICU and she asked me, like, who's David? And I said, why are you asking me about David? Because I never spoke about David at home. And she told me the story, and I was like, wow, I'm going to be a coach one day. But I had my comfort. That you would have with an executive level job. I had a good salary, I had the benefits, I had a company car, trips across the globe. I was a special flyer with Continental or United, you know. So the idea of leaving it all behind, the salary every 2 weeks, and just starting a coaching practice, even though I knew it was part of my passion and maybe part of my long-term destiny from my ICU, was still really scary. Like, what if I failed, right? And so my big thing that sort of triggers me, because we all have something, is judgment. Like, what are people going to say, right? And so when I get into these moments, like, what are people going to go back to this thing I tell myself, you know, hey, Michael, you'd be a lot less worried about what people say and think about you when you realize they actually spend less time really thinking about you, right? So we think people are thinking about us all the time. Social media sort of plays into it.
Yeah, aren't they?
People
Aren't they all
really,
on my Facebook page?
No. Well, maybe they are, because you are prolific when it comes to Facebook, so maybe they are. But most people are not spending a lot of time thinking about us. We're all in our own stuff. And whenever I get into moments of judgment or fear, and certainly establishing Peloton coaching and consulting was a moment of anxiety or worry or fear, whatever you want to call it. I went to sleep that night. I woke up the next day and I was at peace the next morning. I said, hey, what's the worst that can happen? You know, I fail and I have to go back into industry. So we were like, you know, we all held hands as a family and we decided to jump, and we haven't looked back since.
There you go. It's wonderful.
And I still have a shot of hiring my wife one day, maybe. I don't know, but she's got a good career of her own. So, you know, she never lets that one go at cocktail parties.
I like that. It's different. Never know.
Never know. You never know.
All right. So you've talked many times about 5 steps that were part of your recovery, and they somehow echo key components of the grief process. Would you like to share that? Because I think that's kind of part and parcel with people digging deep and making change and pivoting.
Well, so, you know, the 5, you know, for me, when I came out of it, when I started getting my bearings and I was in the orthopedic wing, I was messed up. My left leg was all bandaged up. My right leg was in traction, and I had it all. I had the denial. I had the anger, and I really had a lot of revenge. I wanted to get back at the driver. You know, the driver was driving with a revoked license. It should have never happened, right? It was like, life is not fair. You know, people would come and say, oh, you're so lucky. And I really didn't want to hear it at the time. I was like, hey, you know, I would have been really great to be lucky about 5 seconds earlier. Or they were like, oh, God was looking out for you. And I was like, you know what? God was having a scone and coffee about, 2 minutes later than he should have, because in another 30 seconds, it would have been completely different, right? I would have missed the truck altogether. Had I slept in. All those sliding door moments, that movie with Gwyneth Paltrow, sort of comes to mind. The what ifs, right? These moments in life where, like, if you catch the train or you don't, if you hit the snooze or you don't, but I was definitely in that funk. When you're in the hospital for that long, you have a lot of time by yourself. It's actually a very lonely process, and your mind goes to a dark spot. And very transparently, I was like, I can do this to this guy. He harmed me, therefore I will harm him. Then I had my moment. I realized that. And I was back in New Jersey. They had flown me back from New Mexico. I went to one hospital in New Jersey to have skin graft operations. And then I went to the hospital where they took Christopher Reeves when he had his equestrian accident. And I started my rehabilitation process. I was in a wheelchair and the whole 9 yards. And in that moment, I realized, wow, if I wanted to be the best person that I could be, that I wanted to be, the best husband, the best father. Those were my goals. That was my telescope moment. It wasn't about how much money I was making, the job titles, the material possessions. I just wanted to be the best version of me that I possibly could be. That I knew I had to start with my belief system, my mindset, my attitude, if you will. And then from there, it really sort of moved into, all right, what type of energy am I showing up to rehab with? Those around me. What type of energetic connections did I have? Because I knew my connections, the people in my peloton, the people in my tribe were actually going to help me actually rebound and become that person I wanted to become. And then it was moments of celebration, celebrations of milestones. We measured my degrees of extension and flexion every day, and we celebrated every single degree. So
the process.
It was a process. It was, and that, you see it on my website, making tomorrow better than today. And that was every day I would wake up. I'm like, we're going to work hard today. We're going to work hard today to make tomorrow better.
Michael, don't you still do that?
I still do that. I still, it's like every day, like I'm work hard today, and we call it Gary V, call it hustle and grind. If I was Gary V, it would be make tomorrow better than today. You see it again on my website, and that's the process. And sometimes along the way, I make great strides in a given day, and sometimes I take some steps back, and that was the recovery process. And the S in my best principles was really around the successes and our setbacks. That even the darkest moments, and I had some dark moments in my recovery. I was just telling someone before the Zoom about one surgery I had in 2014. I had some bone chips lock my knee up. They operated on it. They removed the bone chip, and then the knee got infected. And I had to spend a week in the hospital with another surgery, 6 weeks of IV antibiotics through a PICC line in my chest. And that was another dark moment, but it was another test, right? What doesn't break you makes you stronger. And that was worth celebrating. And those moments, the micro moments of success, and even the micro moments of setbacks are what drive our transformation. They make those small moments are worth celebrating because they make the big moments happen. I firmly believe that.
Right.
And
you
so
didn't have all the small moments, you may not have gotten to the big moment.
yeah, and the thing is, we rush through life. We're so busy at work. We're going 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12. That's our day. And then we, have 15 minutes to eat lunch at our desk, and then 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And then at 5 o'clock, we got to go home and make dinner or do back to school stuff or school stuff. And then we do our email at night. And we don't take moments to celebrate the little things.
We do.
The big things we celebrate, right? But the little ones we don't. And I think celebrating the little ones. And hey, I'll say this: before my accident, I didn't celebrate the little ones, right? I was, in my early 30s. I had a great career. I was like, hey, everyone else. I wasn't doing a lot of that stuff, right? Life wasn't bad. Life was good. 2 young girls, a great wife, a great career, but I was stressed. I wasn't as happy as I wanted to be, but I didn't really know how to make myself happier. Then the accident happened, and that was the first step. And then the aha moment really propelled me forward.
So I'm going to interject my point of view on this, which is kind of a takeoff of what you're saying. And one of the things I talk about all the time is our ability to listen to our lives. And I don't think until I made my own personal pivot and change in my life did I really realize how true that is. Because our lives are always talking to us, but we don't always hear what's going on. We don't always visualize and see it. And sometimes it takes something, I hate to say, as horrific as what happened to Michael, for him to have seen, okay, my life is going this way, but that's not really working. I don't necessarily want my life to be going that way. What do I want? But we've got all of these things that are manifesting around us all the time, all this noise that we don't always listen to. Sometimes it's really just our inner child saying, yeah, how about over here, pick me. And we're, no, I can't do that yet. I'm not ready for that. Or I can't make that happen yet. Or, I'll come back to you. But we don't really listen. And when we have that ability to say, okay, where am I at? What's really going on for me? How is that working or not working? And we take the time to look at those little pieces a little bit more, as you were talking about. That's when we really have the ability to shift and have the ability to take ourselves up on our own wisdom, so to speak. So.
No, I'm right there with you. And one of the things I often try to relay in my story is that I'm sort of the common person, like I'm your neighbor. And there's a lot of great inspirational stories out there of people who have gone through things far worse than I went through. And, and they've come out of it and they've climbed Mount Everest, or they've done the Kona Ironman, or they've hiked across the United States. And these are these magical big moments of, and what I wanted out of this is that, I certainly could have made a different choice. I could have said, you know what, that's what I want to do. And that's my definition of success. And one of the things I try to relay to my clients, and I guess tonight, is that's just one definition of success. A lot of times we get into these moments and we see those and we're like, oh, wow, that's what success looks like. Yeah. That's really cool in the moment. You're at a meeting, you get inspired, sort of a Tony Robbins moment. And it's really cool. And Tony is highly entertaining and very wise. But then you're like, I can't do that. And then we just we go back to being stuck, right? And then we miss our small moments. Part of my message is like, hey, being the best dad or husband or person, that is like a pretty awesome definition of success. That
everybody's definition is different.
Yeah, and that's just about you. You're not comparing yourself to anybody else. It's just the best version of you, and everyone can have that. And then when we have definitions of success that are not trying to judge ourselves against something else, then we can see those smaller moments, I think, a little bit more easily, and then take action on them.
Right, definitely. So people often realize that they're having a little bit of that epiphany or aha or success moment, if you would. But they may not just realize how much power is in that moment. And you and I, we talk about energy a lot.
Yeah.
Forward energy being the foundation, I think, of good coaching, certainly. So when we talk about energy and emotion and change and pivoting, what do those things have in common? Why is that important?
Well, so Ellen also is an IPEC coach, so Ellen can also speak to energy. So, so Ellen's a CPCer, so soon to be an ICFer, and a whole bunch of other acronyms, right, Ellen? So thumbs up, right? So, to me, it's about change and forward movement, right? So the shift, the pivot, the energy, there's movement to it. There's a cascading flow, ripple to our energy, right? We show up. We can show up in a room and no one can say anything. We can pick up on someone's vibe, right? Our vibe sort of attracts our tribe, right? So that's something that I tweet out that Bill is like super awesome and retweets it out. But you can go in. You can go you can go into a conference room at work, and you can before anyone says anything, you can pick up on what's happening. And that's energy, right? You can pick up when it's really building and creation and togetherness, like we're together, we're in sync. sort of like level 6, right, Randy? Or you can tell when it's going to be like this. And then it's fight or flight, right? It's friend or foe. And it starts to play with our thoughts and emotions, and it drives our behaviors. It changes. It can influence how we show up when we let our emotional brain wag the dog, right? So, but if we pause just for a moment, ask ourselves the question, hey, how do we want to show up in this moment? Tap into this, we can make better decisions. And maybe just change that energy that we're casting out, and maybe change the vibe in the room. Or change the vibe in our life.
What we put out there. So if we're putting out there fear and trepidation and all the things we can't do, then we're going to be manifesting some more stuff that we can't do and carrying.
It's the Henry Ford, right? Whether you believe you can't or you can, you are right, right?
Exactly.
So I probably got that slightly off, but I think Henry Ford sort of got it right. So our mind sort of drives our body in a lot of ways. And definitely what we think of drives our behavior.
Exactly. So much of this, I think, is also about creating and understanding some defining moments. And sometimes when we're in it and we're having this like, wow, this is whatever, we don't even stop to realize that that's one of those things that's a defining moment. It's something that is allowing you to pause for a moment, to step back and to be a little more introspective about what's actually happening or how you're listening to your life. For me, and I talk about it in the book too, my defining moment in becoming a coach and changing gears was really asking myself a question, a really basic question, really, but it just triggered everything. And the question I asked myself, midlife, was, what would I do if it were 10 years ago? And when I asked myself that question, I knew the answer. There was no reason I couldn't do that now. But it wasn't really that I wanted. So I started pulling apart what my answer was and figuring out, okay, why is that what I would do? You know, how does that serve me? What's my why behind that? When I pulled it all apart and put the pieces back together, that's when coaching appeared. So, you know, if I wasn't listening to my life, if I wasn't taking in that energy and manifesting what's next, I don't think I would have gotten to what's next. So it's kind of important to remember that we have to be mindful of really what's going on for us.
Oh, no doubt. My moment was that ICU moment where I, kept on repeating David's name. So I knew there was something there. But back in 2014, when the universe the company was going to go through another change, and it was another destructive downsizing change. And, what I love is building people up and helping them become their best version of themselves. And we were just downsizing too much. And I was tired of doing that. And for me also, it was a moment that my girls just happened to be 12 and 15. They were at ages where they were starting to pay attention to, hey, does dad dig his job? Does he like it? So, and hey, you know what, at that time and what was happening at work, I would do the 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, so forth and so on pace that I just talked about. And then I would turn the game on after dinner and do my homework as they were doing their homework. And then I'd probably doze off, to be honest. Maybe after a glass of Pinot, and Ken would be like, off, a little bit. But they were paying attention, and I wanted them to understand that you can actually enjoy your work.
Yes.
Work can be joyful. It can be meaningful.
And that goes right back, Michael, to what I was saying about legacy before.
Absolutely, yeah.
We have the power to create that, and we get caught up in what we do because what we do is what we know, and that's what we do, right? Doesn't mean that that's not has to be our choice always. We can shift and make other choices in favor of what we really want that legacy to be. So in Michael's case, let's say, he's got his 2 daughters and he's looking at it and saying, okay, well, they're looking at me. What's the message I'm telling them? And am I spending the time even with them that I want to? Your oldest is out of the house now. She just started college.
Yeah. We're 10 days into it.
Right, and that's a whole new world.
I'm surviving. We'll make it all about me. I think she's doing fine. I get a text from her every now and again, but I'm surviving. I haven't cried today.
Today?
So it's good.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
So tomorrow might be another day. She might be calling me at 9:02. I told her we're doing this. So she's got a Microsoft Office computer question. So that's still important when it comes to computer tech issues, I guess.
Right.
So.
But the point being is that, you know, especially as parents, you realize at some point how fleeting that 18 years or so is.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, once they're out of the house, it's not that you're not creating legacy, but you don't have the same opportunities to spend time the same way or to, you know, build that rapport that you can build in those first 18 years. And so the choices that we make, whether they're what we have to make because that's the job, that's the money, that's the whatever, or we're just caught up in our stuff, is the choices that we make. And, you know, whether you choose to, for me, I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, or you choose to step down from what you're doing while your kids are still under your roof like Michael did so he can be at games and be more attentive as well. Those are choices we make, and they're about quality of life, and they're about pivoting sometimes. Maybe that wasn't the path you were on. Maybe it's a path you want to be on and a message you want to be forming.
Yep, and I wanted to show them that they could reinvent themselves regardless. And I know you'll love this, you know, because you're a reinvention transformational coach. I wanted to show them that you can reinvent yourself at any given moment in time, regardless of what age you're at. And you know, when I told them I was quitting, they were like, the first question they asked me was, we were in Penn State. We were at a volleyball tournament. And I said, "Hey, Dad's leaving. He's going to start Peloton eventually, you know, finally." And they were like, "Are we going to move?" And I go, "No, we're not going to move. But Dad's going to be around more." And they're like, "Okay, that's cool. We can go with that." So, but you know, one of the reasons why I started writing my book about my accident recovery was, you know, a lot of people, when I became a coach, they heard my story for the first time and they were like, "Oh, you got to write a book. It's going to be great."
Me?
Yeah, Randy was one of them. So I'm not going to lump you into this part of the story, but a lot of people told me like, "Oh, you got to write a book. It's going to be great for your business." And that wasn't really meaningful for me. I was like, I don't want to do it for that, you know, and I actually took
I think I said something else to you.
So, and I took a course with Seth Godin and I actually found the purpose behind writing the book. It was legacy for my daughters. They were 3.5 and 7 months old at the time. And I'm writing the book for them. You know, when it's done, I'm going to charge them $50,000 a copy so I can get back some of my time. But they don't know that yet, so please don't tell them this.
It'll be our secret.
But I went in thinking, okay, I'm going to write the book for them. And if other people want to buy it, and if it can change someone else's life or make a difference, that's really cool. But if no one else reads it besides the two of them, then it's a project worth taking on. And I had a big block. You know, I wrote a lot and then I stopped. I wrote a lot and I stopped. And then once I actually found the real, what is it for, the real why, then I was able to start working on it and actually make some steps to get it out. And so it'll be out next spring. So it'll be a little bit of a gift.
Do you remember what I said about the book?
Well, so live and Zoom. So thanks for the stumpy question. I can't remember. You know, I'm going to throw
it at you.
I had a half a glass of wine. That's all I had.
One of the things that I said to you was, "Wow, you have to write that story." And you said, "Oh, no, all the reasons why."
Yeah, I did all that.
Sure. And I don't think I really went into that, "Oh my God, this could be explosive for your business." I think where I was at was very much the legacy piece. And there was another piece, and that is writing it for you. Because you're at the core of everything that you do. And connecting the dots on everything you've been through, all the things your life told you before, all the things it tells you now, and bringing that full circle. And sometimes if we can connect all those pieces, it's the best possible thing we can do for ourselves.
No, it's definitely, yeah. Now I remember, you've jogged my memory. So, but that actually has been a great part of the process. So in going back and it's given us a chance to have a conversation as a family about the events. You know, just it happened to be you know, on tribal land, Native American land, and we've had a whole educational conversation here in our household about, you know, the Native American population, and you know, and it's highly charged, right? So, and one daughter feels very strongly one way, and then another daughter feels very strongly the other way, and I sort of act as arbitrator, mediator. So which is good. I guess that's
It brings it
I
all
still have a role as a parent, right, along with my wife.
brings it all together, definitely. So one of the last things I wanted to really touch on before we get into where people can find us and why we do what we do is the idea of tolerance and acceptance. That's a biggie. What are we tolerating, and where do we turn that just a little bit so that we're able to accept something, and what's the big difference there?
Well, for me, I think, with tolerance, you still have some of the energy, right? Still some of the saddlebags.
You
You
do.
know,
A
you're
lot of
putting up
judgment too.
a lot of judgment. Acceptance, with acceptance, you can have forgiveness. You can let go of the energy, right? So you can stay present. You can intuitively listen. You're not rehashing events. You're not worried about the future. Acceptance is key. For me, it's the portal into forgiveness.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful lessons I learned about forgiveness, and a quick real story. We happened to go as a family to Birkenau, outside of Krakow. We got a tour of Birkenau, Auschwitz, by a twin who survived the camp. She was sent there by her with her parents and her family and her twin. And if you know the story, twins were treated everyone was treated horribly, and the twins were treated unbelievably poorly and horribly, and just devastating. And someone in the tour asked, "Hey, Eva, do you hate the Nazis? Do you hate the Germans?" And she was like, "Nope, I've forgiven them." And she said, I've forgiven them not for them, but I've forgiven them for me, because I realized that carrying around that hate, it wasn't serving me well." And this gets into acceptance and forgiveness, and hey, it's a highly charged emotional topic, right?
It is.
And some people would say, hey, how can she do that? That she is wrong. And I just sort of accept Eva's choice as her choice. And what it did is it illustrated that even under the most gross circumstances, that he acceptance. And if she can find it, I certainly can find it. And for me, that was my moment. It was the last puzzle piece where I forgave the driver. Because to be honest, I was still carrying around a little bit of energy even after all those years. I wasn't completely clean with it until we had that tour.
Right. And I think the whole piece of this too is that once you accept, you're letting go. And when we let go, we have capacity to let in.
Yeah.
And when we hold on, we usually don't have that much space, right? Because it's all full. So if we let go of some of the things that aren't working, that we're holding on to, that really aren't working for us, we can bring in the things that will. We may not even know what those are yet, but at least we have the room to bring them in, to manifest.
It's bandwidth, right? Even when we prioritize, when we stop chasing the shiny objects and we prioritize, we sort of practice the elements of essentialism, which is a great book. It's one of my favorite books from last year. We can get focused on things, and we can move things forward when we do that. It gives us bandwidth. And as you're saying, we can let things in, which is fantastic.
And moving things forward is what I do every single day with people. I ask the question, what's next? So what is next? I think we have some people here who, like Ellen, who are also coaches, but why coach? And not everybody understands that. So I just wanted to spend a moment before we say where people can find us and more about that. On why hire a coach? What's the impact of that?
So for me to answer, or for you to answer? You want me to answer?
Some stuff out.
So I think having I tell people this when it comes to coaching. Like, coaching isn't for people who, I'll put it a different way. So, because I coach a lot in corporate America, and I tell my clients, people who are making the decision to hire a coach, I don't coach people on performance improvement programs. I sort of take more of an executive athlete point of view. You look at the Olympics and Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps, we know Michael and his story. We also know his coach, right? So here he is, the greatest Olympian ever, right, in terms of swimming, or maybe for all of sports. And he has a coach, right? So a coach it gives us perspective, right? It can look at our story. It can look at our movement, our thought process, the whole kit and caboodle from A to Z, and help us level up. So I think a coach acts as a strategist, an accountability partner, an advisor, someone to, work out things and try to level up. And that's what I try to, do when I approach my corporate clients, is that we're taking someone who is at a really great level and making them even more amazing. Because the reason why I got into coaching is I wanted to change lives. I believe we're on the planet to make a difference in the lives around us. Exactly. And I know from experience that when bosses show up and they're better, they change lives. Their energy is cascading to their team, and I want to change leaders. Because if we can change leaders, we can change work. And when we change work, we can change what happens outside of work, because there's no firewall between work and life. It's all one and the same. We're all connected. And so, but I coach holistically. I had a client today, a VP in an advertising agency, and we talked about back to school and how to change the back to school experience between her and her son, because she gets emotional and there's an energy that's negative with that, and she brings it to work. So we want to try to minimize that so she can be more focused at work. It sort of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, coaching slows life down so we can look back in and take a different perspective and a different look at really what's going on. Because sometimes we're just stuck in it. We don't see it. And we need to see it. So there's a lot of clarity. So I just want to thank everybody for being on. If anyone has any questions, please type them into chat right now. In the meantime, we're going to tell you where you can find us and some places that we're going to be. So you can always find me on my website, and every event that I have, everything's always on my website. So www.randylevincoaching.com. And reach out via email at randy@randylevincoaching.com. The Get Results book is available on Amazon. It's amazon.com/author/Randy Levin Coaching. Also on my website. I have a free ebook on my website as well, 9 actionable tips for mastering your road to reinvention, and I have a whole bunch of events. Also up there, I'm going to highlight a few that I have a virtual book signing on 9/12. It's a book signing party with another author from this book, and you can log into that, and that'll be on Zoom as well. On 9/19, I have, for anybody who's in Northern New Jersey, I have a live book signing event workshop with an author from a previous book called Breakthrough and Get Results. And I'm at the Waldwick Public Library, which is local to me, on the 22nd with The Power of Change, What Drives You, and a book signing. And very, very happy on the 19th of October to be part of 201 Magazine's Women for Women panel discussion about going for it. Here's a topic, going for it. So that's me. Michael, where can we find you?
Well, actually, I want to be found in that comfy red chair that you have in your office.
Yeah, 2 of them, actually. The other one.
I totally need to get one for my office. As you can see in the background, I have I have a step stool in the back. So I need to get one of those fancy red chairs. Mm-hmm. So certainly you can find me. My website is pelotoncc.net. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I blog for the Huffington Post. I'm on Twitter. Bill and I are connected on the hip on Twitter. He's like my Twitter buddy. So, right, Bill? So he's amazing. So, and then you can just call me, the book comes out in the spring, so I don't have any book signings or anything like that. But you can find me certainly through social media and connections, and just, you can just give me a buzz and we can.
Yeah, I have one of those too. Give me a buzz.
That's a lot better than sometimes like Facebook and LinkedIn and all that stuff like that. But thanks for joining, and hopefully what we shared was meaningful to you guys. And it was a great way to spend the night. And we'll see what the kids have done to the house, and and what's for dinner.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.